all of our other. Hi, guys. Welcome to Real Food Recovery. We are on episode 42, What Matters Most. I am so excited about this topic. But of course, before we get into it, I want to say hello to my partner, Jamie. How's it going?
Good. How are you? This is a
Good.
great topic, Paige.
I know. I'm glad to be here today. It's always fun when we're together.
Yes.
So I love this topic so much. And let me give you a little background. When I came up with this topic, when we were talking about this topic together about what matters most, I had heard a talk at church about this man who his wife always said, what matters most lasts longest. And in fact, it was so important to her, and she had said it so many times over her lifetime. When she passed away, her kids actually wrote that on her tombstone along with other life lessons that she left an imprint on them. So I thought it was a very special
Beautiful.
topic and germane to what we do here in
Yes.
processed food addiction, that you and I, how we work with our members at Real Food Recovery. So that just a little bit of history with that, but mostly this topic forces you to take a deep look on the inside and really decide what matters most to a successful recovery for you and why. Not what others tell you is the most important, but what speaks to your recovery and the loudest. It's that sweet spot where we begin to trust ourselves. Then we become our own guru and value our judgment above anyone else's. And by the way, being our own guru, it's one of our leading podcasts. Actually, Jamie's podcast on the Paradise Lights is
Oh,
number
Paradise
one.
by the Dashboard Lights.
Yes, has now risen to number one, and Guru is a close second to that. So,
Wow.
yes, we're all about becoming our own guru.
Very cool. Very cool. Well, this is a great phrase to remember. I really appreciate, I've never heard it put this way, but I
Mhm.
really appreciate this phrase. If other people's, something I learned, if other people's feelings matter most, then we prioritize them. If peace matters most, we prioritize it. And if comfort matters most, we will do whatever we can to keep ourselves numbed out and comfortable above all else. And I spent
Mhm.
30 plus years doing that, letting,
That makes you an
letting,
expert, right?
yeah, exactly. Unfortunately, letting the parts of me, the less mature, less, worldly parts of me, would dictate comfort above all else. And I sacrificed um, the lessons in life that I could have really taken and grown in earlier. But I saved those for my middle 30s and on. And at least I'm there. This is where addiction can grab hold onto us, right? Where we prioritize comfort above all else, addiction can grab a hold.
Mhm.
And once I admitted to myself that I was prioritizing my comfort over my health, I had to have an honest internal dialogue if I wanted to be sick forever and potentially die young, which is exactly where I was. I woke up I was in my early to mid 30s, maybe 33. And I remember, hearing very clearly, you're not going to make it to 40.
Oh my gosh.
The way that you were going, it was not, I mean, it was not good. Morbidly obese, could hardly move anymore. Everything was taking a toll on my heart and on my cardiovascular system, just
Mhm.
moving around all of that extra body mass.
Yeah.
Um, and I really needed to decide if I wanted to value my health above all and give myself a chance at a better life. And I realized nobody was going to come and do it for me. I had to do it.
Mhm.
So I began to make choices that aligned with what mattered most to me.
It's so funny that you say that, because just this morning in our daily connections hour in Real Food Recovery, we were talking about the topic of prioritization,
Mm.
and someone was talking about how they do pretty good on the weeks during the week, but the weekend they're just so busy that, their food gets off balance with how busy they are. And she said, maybe I need to make it a priority. Oh, there's a good idea.
Yeah.
And so, we talked about that. If that really is your priority, then before the weekend comes, Wednesday or Thursday, you prep all your food for the weekend if you won't
Mhm.
have time, or whatever it takes to
Right.
be successful. But I love that point. I love what you just said.
Or
So,
have a plan,
right,
right?
exactly.
Make a
You've got
plan for the weekend.
you have. It's just that simple. You've got to have a plan and prioritize it right on.
Mhm.
Um, I was having a conversation on this very topic with a girlfriend in our Real Food Recovery addiction community, and she brought up the topic of impulse control. right when she said those two little words, a light bulb came on in my head. And I thought, that's it. That is recovery. There is nothing
Mm.
more to recovery than impulse control. And when you look at it like that, then you can start dissecting this answer to impulse control.
Mhm.
So, being a math minor, yes, I've dropped that in here a few times because that's the only time I get to use it is when I drop it in a conversation. So being a math minor, numbers are big for me.
Mhm.
So I'm a geek that way. So immediately I was thinking of how can I create this balanced equation that goes something like application of skills equals recovery maturity equals impulse control equals peace. All of those things,
Hmm.
if anybody has ever done chemistry or physics where you have to balance the elements chart, things have to equal when you combine them.
Mhm.
So that's all those things together. Recovery maturity equals impulse control equals peace.
Yeah.
And it's all through application of skills. So since we all want to be mature in our recovery, today we're going to be addressing those skills and what matters most in perfecting them.
Yeah. Yeah. So how do you even know where to start in processed food addiction recovery? How
Mhm,
could you even know what matters most if you don't know where to start?
mhm.
And most of all, keep in mind what matters most lasts longest. So it's definitely worth the effort to explore, don't you think?
Oh, yeah, and for me, this started with education. I
Mhm.
finally understood what I was dealing with. I knew I had a sugar problem, but I didn't realize that there was this large segment of population suffering the same way I was. I wasn't out there talking about it. I really just thought I had this willpower problem. So finding
Mhm.
a recovery community that used these arrows to kind of point, they took me by the shoulder and said, go this way, go this way, go this way, go this way. That was pivotal in me getting off sugar. I could not have ever done it on my own. I tried, I got close, I gave it my all, but I was missing a few pieces. And the science was what kind of moved the needle for me when I understood that, as you put it so well, my body was reacting exactly like it was supposed to react when
Mhm.
I was exposed to sugar. So then I finally knew where to go from there. So understanding the science behind I was reacting how I did around sugar really it took the blinders off. It helped me know that I wasn't alone and it gave me a starting point of where I need to hyper focus my recovery efforts. What about you?
Yeah. So yeah, for me, it came through education as well. First being aware, right? I remember that day in
Mhm.
2017 where I was doing I knew enough to do food prep. I had food prepped for years by that point, but I didn't understand why I was food prepping and how critical it was. It was a nuisance to me. Food prepping was a nuisance for
That
years.
never changed. That never changes.
No, but I didn't understand why I needed to. I didn't understand why, and I was still in 2017, I was still trying to moderate processed,
Yes.
right?
Mhm.
Even just one day a week or half of a day a week, I was trying
Wow.
to, you know, going out to the dinner or going out to a party or being in a family function and trying to moderate it, and then wondering why I had a food monkey on my back for the whole week afterwards.
Yes.
So really it came through that awareness piece, which helped when I learned about processed food addiction and that it was an addictive cycle
Mhm.
and that it wasn't necessarily hunger, it was withdrawal from the food.
Oh, yeah.
And the cravings weren't actually true hunger. They were beyond cravings. They were actually physical withdrawal from
Mhm.
chemicals in the
Right.
food. Once I understood that, I was able to say, okay, this is why I lose my temper about things. This is why I can't process situations like somebody who is more balanced. This is why, I knew I had some blood sugar dysregulation going on, and I had a lot of withdrawal symptoms going on.
Mhm.
And so that was awareness and acknowledgement, and then I had to work on acceptance. So of course I tried to do it a little bit here, a little bit there, and see if I could make it work, but of course I couldn't. So I had to, over time, the next few months, I accepted that I really did have what this was, and it was very alarming to me. And then I had to, okay, take different action. If I was going to do the same things, I was going to keep getting the same results. So I needed to stop. And say, okay, I know that I need to take different action here. Otherwise, I'm going to stay in this addiction.
That was hard for you to accept that you had a food addiction?
Well, it was at first it was hard to accept because it seemed so so big and for me shameful. But it ended up getting to the point where I was accepting of it, and it allowed me to be free because I
Yeah.
was able to understand that it wasn't just me. But that came later for me.
Yeah, that's just so interesting because when I found out and could articulate what was happening, for me, it was like a huge relief to understand,
Yeah.
okay, this the
Yeah. Oh, well, that I think the reason that it took me a little longer is because I come from a very, very shame-based background.
mm,
So where everything that I say and think and do is wrong, or there's something wrong with me. So I think that I thought that I just naturally assumed that there was something wrong with me.
mm. And by the way, I was being funny when I said that food prep is always an annoyance, but don't you think the more we get into recovery, it has to be done?
Yeah,
So
it does.
we just change our attitude to it's a safety net, and so you can change it to appreciation.
Mhm.
I'm not saying it's fun. I mean, who wants to do all the work? But it actually is a time saver in the long run.
It
Huge
is
time saver.
huge
I
time
would
saver.
argue with anybody about that, but it's no fun when you have to stop and do it for a couple hours. But
Right.
the payoff is exponentially greater. And I think you learn how to adjust, like we've talked about listening to our podcast to make the time go fast or whatever,
Mhm.
but your attitude about it changes. So I just wanted to
Agreed.
bring that back up. So, when we started this podcast, we were very deliberate about our logo being the tree of life. It has
Yes.
a strong root system, a sturdy trunk, and branches that deliver life. Each of those branches took on a specific meaning to our message. Then we addressed them in what we believe order of importance. So we always start out with food or food prep. That has to be in place.
Mhm.
Sleep is right almost equal with food prep. Movement, spirituality, those are our four cornerstones. And then we add in education, connection to self and others, inner family work, attitude, other addictive substances, stress management. Since then, we've highlighted forgiveness and anger management, values, and a few others. So the question becomes, is there any perfect order for importance for everyone that matches everybody's needs? And to make clear, we support everyone coming up with their own priority in sobriety. This just in general, those four cornerstones of food, sleep, exercise, and spirituality, we feel that are pretty much in general need to be in place to
Mhm.
to be in recovery. I think mine can jump around from day to day, but in general, though those top four are really my foundations to stay in recovery. And I totally respect if that doesn't equally match up to others, but for me, I have found that's just it has to
Yeah.
be that way.
They're the gateway.
Mhm.
So there's a gateway either way, right? It's the gateway for me to success or the gateway to failure.
Yeah.
And failure is not some condemning phrase or word to me anymore. Failure is just like, okay, I've learned.
Yeah.
I tripped. I'm going to get up and keep going. But
Mhm.
it's not this like end of the world, cataclysmic, horror anymore. But it was for a long time. I failed and I could never be redeemed. And that's because I had, this belief, right? This deep belief, and it was reinforced by people I had in my life. But now I understand that when it comes to food and movement and sleep and spirituality, if I don't have those things on track, or I'm not putting effort into those things every day, they will be a gateway in away from my recovery. And if I'm putting effort into those things every day, it's a gateway to growing in my recovery.
Oh, I like.
The choice really is mine.
Mhm.
And again, they will change from day to day. Um, but if those are off, right? If one of those is really off, I would say for me, I will go off the rails on the other three over time. Sometimes quickly, sometimes,
Oh, I
but
love
and
that point.
I won't even get to the second 12, the second group of 12. I won't even touch those because I'm stuck in the food, sleep, movement, and spirituality gaps.
That is a fabulous point, what you just brought out about it may not be today, but at some point that will catch up.
Yes. What is the, we just talked this weekend about that meme that I found that I thought was so helpful. Success is a lagging outcome, right?
That was
And,
great.
and so is losing your recovery. It's a
Mhm.
lagging outcome. Everything is a lagging outcome.
Yes. Well put. So smart.
So what is your number one priority in your recovery, Paige, if you could prioritize it?
Yeah, I sound like a broken record, but really what matters most to me is making sure my food prep is done. And it's funny that you asked me that question today because I was sick over the weekend. I missed my Friday. Friday's my grocery shopping day. And so I'm like 4 days behind and I am scrambling right now to put some meals together. And so I can tell a difference. It's not that I'm not doing it, but I'm having to be very creative and quickly think. And I have pulled some things together, but I see how important that food prep is for me to stay on track. And I want to add, it's not just about being ready to go at a moment's notice, but the mental peace and calm. So I don't have that as much right now, the mental peace and calm, because I'm a little bit scrambling. Yeah, I'm Bambi on ice here trying to pull it together when life just is moving at a fast pace. I feel like when I know it's there, it reduces so much food anxiety for me. I can literally relax knowing I'm much less likely to veer off track. I feel safe. I feel protected. Sleep is a close second. Let me add another plug for food prep. I have had a couple of major life events that completely took me off guard, and having my food on hand to grab and run out the door has played a major role in me staying on track and not making a bad situation worse. I
Yeah.
can't say that enough. And also, I do keep a few things in my freezer too,
Mhm.
that if
Right.
I mean, I make everything fresh, but I do have a stockpile in my freezer that if for emergency, I just think it's wise. It's just,
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. Absolutely.
what about you?
Um, for probably the same for me, but I have to prioritize movement next to it. I have to prioritize movement next to my food. I need to move every day for my head, right? The food helps my head for sure, no doubt. But for me, movement is critical to my mental and emotional well-being. Once that's done, I execute the rest of my day. So I might do food prep once a week, or
Mhm.
maybe if I have to do another session later in the week, if I had to. But movement has to be every day. So yes, the food is prepared and ready to go and ready to pull and eat every day, but it's prepped once, maybe twice a week. But for me, movement is every day, non-negotiable, some kind of movement has to be done. Otherwise, I'm not myself.
Okay, can I change my answer? And let me tell you why that you said that. So I told you I was sick over the weekend. So Friday I just slept,
Yeah.
laid down. Saturday I slept less, and Sunday was less. So we're recording on a Monday.
Mhm.
So I had 3 days of total just slogging around. I didn't even, I was in my pajamas Friday, Saturday, and then Sunday I finally took my shower because I felt the energy up to it. By Sunday night, last night, I was like, I'm in a funk. What is going on?
Mm.
And then I realized this morning when I got back to the gym, I'm like, oh, I feel better. I'm pulling
Mhm.
out of the funk. I think it was from totally being completely sedentary and not moving. I'm like, holy smokes. I can either take a pill or I can do movement every
Yeah.
day.
Oh, yes.
I literally felt like a light blue, not deep blue, but a blueness kind of
Yeah.
cascading over my brain. And I'm like, what is going on? I normally have a chipper baseline. And I was like, wow, this hurts. I don't like it.
Isn't that crazy?
Yeah. So I'm changing my answer kind of to yours. I guess it's all up there for me. Those first four, maybe they're all on the same line, but um, a lot of people are struggling with this too. And how do you even figure out what your number one priority is?
Yeah, that's actually a great question. And I know we have similar answers here, I bet, but trial and error, right?
Mhm.
Listening to my body. But but here's the thing, I found for me that I could listen to my body, and if I wasn't really being honest with what it was telling me, if I
Mhm.
wasn't really truly listening honestly, it would derail me. So let's say if I wasn't willing to look in the mirror, the proverbial mirror, and admit to myself what was working and what wasn't working, I could easily fool myself out of reality.
Yeah.
And that is so I would say radical self-honesty, my integrity with myself is my number one skill in recovery. It trumps the 4 pillars for me because I had to be
Mhm.
radically honest with myself about my movement every day, that it was something I needed every day.
Mhm.
And that food prep, I had to be honest with myself that food prep is a non-negotiable, and cutting
Mhm.
corners on food prep, once or twice, a month here and there. If there's like I had a busy summer, so that I cut corners on food prep and did the bare minimum.
Mhm.
And, I was able to make it work, but it was not ideal. And now when I'm back in my
Mhm.
full blown food prep mode, I do better, I feel better, and life is easier.
Yeah.
But my radical self-honesty or integrity allows me to align to my 4 pillars and gives me the courage to admit to myself when I've gone off track.
I love that. Yeah, and we had those conversations during the summer, and I remember you mentioning that at
Yeah.
one point. So,
Mhm.
good job on your radical
Yes.
self-honesty. It
Yes, I
works.
had to be honest with myself.
Yeah, me too. So trial and error. So maybe even failure, and more failure for me, using a process of elimination, you finally land on what works. And it goes back to what we were talking about in the beginning. Application of skills leads to
Mhm.
this maturity in recovery. There's no other way other than just rolling up your sleeves and trying. You just put your head down and go.
Yeah.
And then you figure it out as you go and make edits along the way.
Mhm. One thing that we haven't mentioned specifically, but Paige and I really believe in the importance of having a recovery community. It
Mhm.
falls under the connection and education category in our branches. And we'll talk about why that is, right? Because why it doesn't just fall under connection.
Mhm.
Paige, how big of a deal is having a recovery community, and why can't someone just go it alone?
Well, for me, I used to consider myself more of a loner, but Jamie and I met actually in a recovery community before we started our own community at Real Food Recovery. So participating in a group was new for me. So obviously I had tremendous payoffs in a community. So it's nice to show up where everybody knows your name, familiar with your story, and you're greeted warmly and always supported. And you learn so much from one another. And I had never had that before.
Right.
So in our community, there is a strong emphasis on science. And for me, that might have been the biggest payoff, understanding how the addicted brain works, understanding blood flow between the frontal lobe and the center brain, and then starting on those skills that we've been talking about. Sometimes it's just a simple tip that you might pick up when you're in one of these daily connection hours of ours. One of the things that I like to tell people when they're cute or trigger to try and get that blood flow back to the frontal lobe where
Yeah.
your logic, your braking system is putting your hands on both sides of your cheek and repeating 3 times, "You're okay. You're okay. You're okay." Sometimes you can't always do the hands if you might be in a public place, but even just repeating to yourself 3 times, "You're okay. You're okay. You're okay,"
Mhm.
helps to calm the nervous system down and get your brain back online. What about you?
Yeah. I would say I have always accepted and acknowledged the power of community. I've been ever since I was young, very driven to be in community.
Mm.
It's a game changer for me to be surrounded by people who inspire me to be a better version of myself. I did not understand that I needed to be in communities that were the right fit for me until I was older. A lot of the communities I was in, groups of friends or school groups or other things, some of them weren't always the best communities for me. So I had to learn to be honest with myself about what I was getting from that community, what I was wanting to feel, to give to that community. And if I find my way into a community of people who don't inspire me, which, that happens, I
Sure.
will find my way into a different community. I know I am the sum total of people I spend most of my time with. So why wouldn't I surround myself with people who inspire me to live a better life?
That's a great point. I mean, we talk about that, and I think, can't you see the effects of that in our recovery community where people just are bolstering one another up all day,
100%.
every day? It's amazing what a good
100%.
feel that comes from. So we go on and we talk about a little bit, where does desire and self-direction play in matters of importance? What about for you?
This reminds
Desire.
me of motivation.
Yeah.
For me, motivation is true motivation is intrinsic, right? Comes from within, and it
Mhm.
can be very powerful. But in my recovery, I have learned that if I wait to feel like doing something, I might be waiting for days or weeks. And in my case, 33 years, right? So
Yeah.
I've learned that discipline trumps motivation. If
Mhm.
I'm not disciplined by, in doing what I need to do, and especially when I don't feel like it, which
Right.
is most of the time,
Right.
nothing in my life would change. So when I have to ask myself, when I don't feel like doing something, I have to go in and have a conversation with that part of me. Usually it's my inner child, one of my inner children, or an inner teen who doesn't want to do something, is throwing a tantrum. And I have to remind them that we do these things to keep us safe, we do these things to
Yeah.
keep us healthy. I've got it from here. I'm going to go ahead and take it from here. And I kind of tell them just to go and relax and be on your own for a little while. I've got this. Because if they run the show, those parts of me run the show, I will make immature decisions.
And by the way, just a plug for Jamie, she is expert in the eternal family systems uh, therapy. She really does great work in that area if you're ever looking for more information or how to help yourself with that. So when it comes back to desire and self-direction, for me, that is pivotal. I've
Mhm.
always been a self-starter, and I wanted out of this hell so bad that I was willing to keep searching till I finally found a path out. Definitely desire is what will keep you showing up. And if you have a strong why for your recovery, then that helps you stay in it as well. And no one can give you your why. You have really, that's got to come from within.
Correct, correct. A familiar complaint we often hear is every time I get on a roll, it seems
Mhm.
like some obstacle throws up a roadblock and I get discouraged. How do I manage my thoughts, attitudes, and behaviors in ways that support my recovery?
Well, this is definitely at the top of the list of what matters most in
Yeah.
recovery. I always go back to the simple answer of practice. We can't sprinkle fairy dust on everybody and make you a glass half full person. But luckily, you can formulate your own fairy dust by reframing these negative thoughts. When I work with people, I challenge them to make it a game and see how many points you can get by the end of the day. Literally everything can be reframed. Pretty soon it will be your new default setting. Asking your negative thoughts if that is really true is also a good trick. What about you?
Yeah, I love that trick. I love that trick. Um, this is exactly why we included self-talk and thought life in our list of
Yeah.
branches, right? It is that
Mhm.
important and critical to recovery. Our
Sure.
self-talk can make or break us in recovery.
Total game changer. I agree with that so much. And that is something we work with people in our real food recovery community about. What actually you said it to me once about what's the conversation going on in your head. You were
Yeah.
guiding me on something. I'm like, well, I never stopped and thought about that. And then you asked me, do you want to be friends with that girl? And I'm like, well, not really. It was,
Yeah.
I turned that negative Nelly into somebody that I would want to be friends with. And you know what? Life got better.
Mhm.
So as we move on, we have to talk about, where does hope play into matters of importance, Jamie?
I always say hope is not a strategy. So it's great to have hope, but without a plan, it only gets me so far. Hope
Mhm.
keeps me going, but my plan gets me where I want to go. So it's nice to have hope, but there were many years that I just thought, well, I've got hope, so I'm good. And I never actually took any action. It can
Very
be
good.
a disabler as much as it is an enabler.
That's a great point. Hope is what got me here. It's what keeps me here. Hope for a better life is what gets me out of bed each day. Hearing other success stories helps me foster hope. Listening to our recovery podcast listening to other recovery podcasts like ours,
Mhm.
seeking out others doing what I am doing, staying close to my recovery tribe, all gives me hope. It's very fundamental on this
Mm.
journey. I
Yes.
love this topic that we've talked about, what matters most. I think it's very helpful and a good exercise to really take introspection and look and see where you are on your list of what
Yeah.
matters most to you in your life and in your recovery. Anything else you want to add on this topic before we go to some listener questions?
No, I see we've got a, a few listener questions here. I think I want to make sure we kind of condense it down. Some of them have been discussed before. So I think the first one that really stands out to me, I don't trust my own judgment about how to prioritize steps in recovery. Shouldn't I just ask an expert like you guys? I just want someone to tell me what to do. What are your thoughts on that, Paige?
Well, you're half right, but missing one piece of the equation. Yes, you can definitely start by asking experts what they think. That is a fabulous place to start when it's a trusted resource. However, ultimately, as you get into recovery, you will find your own cadence that is perfectly designed for you, your experiences, your likes, your dislikes, and that is what makes you uniquely you. So, trust
Right.
is built over time as you begin to hone your skills, you will build this confidence. You will become familiar with confidence in yourself to the point that you will naturally start actually helping others and begin to pay it forward exactly like we are doing here at Real Food Recovery.
Yes. Yes. Agreed. I hear next question. I hear people talking about spirituality in recovery, but I am not religious. And my parents forced me to church when I was young and I hated it. That's just not for me. Can I recover without it? Excellent question. This is a great question. I was raised in a religious paradigm and ended up moving away from it because I'd seen a lot of hypocrisy and a lot of hurt and a lot of judgment, and it just didn't feel like the right atmosphere for me. So I ended up, becoming really, really estranged from the church, and actually um ended up moving into a place of questioning all of my spiritual beliefs. And that
Mhm.
did lead me um, down the road. I was already in my recovery, but I was really searching for something else. And
Mhm.
I knew it wasn't the food, but I was still looking to other people and other situations and things to fill that hole that I had,
Mhm.
that God-sized hole. And
Mhm.
again, it doesn't have to be about religion, but
Mhm.
it really, yes, to answer the question, I don't believe that we can recover without some sort of spiritual practice. It does not mean you have to worship God and go to church and believe in a religion. It doesn't mean any of that, but it does mean that we have to understand we've got something bigger than us governing the universe and flowing through us.
Yeah.
And once we understand and accept that, we can make choices from that place instead of making choices from a place of grasping at straws.
Yeah. I agree. We just all need a place to believe in something, a foundation, a place we turn for comfort when life goes awry. You just need something other than people that's bigger than you are to look to help for comfort. It's a journey you decide how that will look like in your life, and you can only do it by exploring what touches the tender places of your heart. So we have one last listener question. I have a lot of past trauma. I hear a lot about the importance of community in recovery. Will that help me work through my childhood issues? Jamie, do you want to take that?
Yeah. So I too have a lot of past trauma, and I hear a lot about the importance, right, of dealing with it, unpacking it, examining
Mhm.
it. Um, here's the deal. I get it. I would say that there's a time. There's a time to, just like, we hear in that famous song, there's a time for certain things in our lives. It's a time to unpack our traumas. There's a time
Mhm.
to examine them. And I would say that there's a time to examine them when we're in a place. So let me just give an example that would probably answer this. In, let's say you have a loved one who's an alcoholic or drug addict, and they go to an inpatient rehab facility. They're gone for 30 days, 90 days, whatever it is. During that time, a counselor will not begin to work with them on their grief, on their trauma, on any of their past until they know that they're clean for a minimum, usually of 7 days. Because they've gone past that withdrawal period and they're clean and they're able to think sober-mindedly. And they know that as they unpack those things, that it could trigger them, and they want to make sure that they're monitoring them while they're triggered, that they're not getting back into the alcohol or drugs or finding their way out of checking out of the rehab. It's the same is true for us, for folks recovering from food addiction. If we have trauma in our past, we need to seek a community of understanding people, like-minded people. But they're not going to help you work through your childhood issues. That's the work that we have to do for ourselves, by ourselves. But we can have people lifting us up while we do it. That's the benefit of community. I would say that there's a real benefit of having a trained therapist or counselor help you through that. A huge benefit.
Yeah. I know some therapists will not help people until they're completely clean.
Exactly.
We feel like it's okay to start in on some things and not just close the door completely. So
exactly.
Yeah. Good way to end, good note to end on. So I appreciate your insights on that. Great episode. Enjoyed that so much. If you are looking for a community yourself, you can find more information at realfoodrecovery4u.com. That's the number 4, the letter U, where we have an online food addiction recovery community just waiting for you. It's helped many, and I'm sure it will do the same for you as well. Join us, won't you? Thanks, guys. See you next time.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Take care.